Let's now address one of the most odd and controversial claims that have surfaced within modern Adventism. The idea that the Sunday law is conditional.
The idea of a worldwide Sunday law made a lot of sense back then. The world is quite different today. So we should not assume that after the passage of more than 150 years, or about 150 years, that every detail would necessarily be fulfilled. Remember Isaiah 11. Considering both the Bible and world history, were Ellen White alive today, there's at least a chance that her depiction of the end would be different than it was in the 1880s.
John Paulian has suggested that Ellen White's statements about Sunday legislation might never be fulfilled in the way we once expected. Him and others claim the world has changed and the prophetic fulfillments could take other forms. In other words, because Sunday laws haven't yet materialized, maybe they never will. Or if they do, it won't be as described in the Great Controversy. But is that what inspiration actually teaches? First, let's clarify what conditional prophecy means. In the Bible, some prophecies were conditional. Jonah's message to Nineveh is a prime example. God said the city would be destroyed in 40 days, but because the people repented, the judgment was delayed. This principle is also plainly stated in Jeremiah 18, 7-10. At what instant I shall speak concerning a nation and concerning a kingdom, to pluck up and to pull down and to destroy it. If that nation turn from their evil, I will repent of the evil. And at what instant I shall speak concerning a nation, to build and to plant it, if it do evil in my sight, then I will repent of the good. Ellen White echoed this biblical principle when she wrote, "These promises of God to His people were on condition of their obedience. If they would serve the Lord fully, He would do great things for them." She also said, "It should be remembered that the promises and the threatenings of God are alike conditional." But here's the crucial point. Conditionality applies to promises and threatenings based on human response, not to God's overreaching prophetic outline for the end of time. The Sunday law crisis, as presented in Revelation 13 and 14, is not a mere threat. It is a divinely revealed event that fits into the final test for God's people. Ellen White was unmistakably clear. Sooner or later, Sunday laws will be passed. That's not presented as maybe. That is a definite, a prophetic certainty. She further wrote, "The dignitaries of church and state will unite to bribe, persuade, or compel all classes to honor the Sunday. The lack of divine authority will be supplied by oppressive enactments. Political corruption is destroying love of justice and regard for truth, and in order to secure public favor, legislators will yield to the popular demand for a law enforcing Sunday observance." This is not vague symbolism. It is a detailed scenario which includes laws, political pressure, religious compromise, and civil enforcement of Sunday worship. The claim that this might be replaced with something different due to changed circumstances is to imply that God's warnings through Ellen White were speculative, incomplete, or outdated. That is not how the Spirit of prophecy describes Himself. In fact, she said, the prophecy of Revelation 13 declares that the power represented by the beast with lamb-like horns shall cause the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the papacy. It has been shown that the United States is the power represented by the beast with lamb-like horns, and that this prophecy will be fulfilled when the United States shall enforce Sunday observance, which Rome claims as the special acknowledgement of her supremacy. So let's ask the question again. Is the Sunday law conditional? If we're talking about when it will happen, yes. Timing may be affected by the faithfulness or delay of God's people. But if we're talking about whether it will happen, Ellen White leaves no room for doubt. It will happen, just as described. Some say, but she was writing it in the 1880s. That was the era of the Blair Bill. Maybe that's why she thought Sunday legislation was imminent. That argument assumes her writings were merely commentary on current events, not divine revelation of future ones. But Ellen White wrote about Sunday laws decades before the Blair Bill. In 1850, she stated, "Then the Catholics bid the Protestants to go forward and issue a decree that all who will not observe the first day of the week instead of the seventh shall be slain, and the Catholics whose numbers are large will stand by the Protestants. The Catholics will give their power to the image of the beast, and then Protestants will work as their mother worked before them to destroy the saints. But before their decrees bring forth or bear fruit, the saints will be delivered by the voice of God." That's 28 years before the Blair Bill, and she repeatedly affirmed that the vision was not a product of her time, but a revelation for the end of time. The prophets spoke less for their own time than for the ages which have followed and for our own day. The events connected with the close of probation and the work of preparation for the time of trouble are clearly presented. But multitudes have no more understanding of these important truths than if they had never been revealed. Furthermore, our past history during the Blair Bill crisis has actually clearly demonstrated the validity of the unconditional aspect of end-time prophecy. As the loud cry of the third angel was beginning to swell, the Blair Bill was introduced to Congress. A.T. Jones stood before the Senate saying that if the government lends its power to religious institutions by enforcing religious observance, then it sets up a tyranny over conscience and the principle of religious liberty is overthrown. Jones was not defending a theory. He was battling real Sunday legislation being debated in Congress. Neither he nor Ellen White ever said, well, if it doesn't pass, then maybe Revelation 13 will take another form. Instead, they saw it as the beginning of what was inevitable. In 1882, Ellen White recalled how people had scoffed at the very idea of Sunday laws. Many smiled and would not believe when we told them 20 and 30 years ago that the Sunday would be urged upon all the world and a law be made to compel its observance and force conscience. We see it being fulfilled. All that God has said of the future will surely come to pass. Not one thing will fail of all that He has spoken. Not one word will fail. She also testified, the test will surely come. 36 years ago, I was shown that what is now transpiring would take place, that the observance of an institution of the papacy would be enforced upon the people by a Sunday law, while the sanctified rest day of Jehovah would be trampled underfoot. That takes us all the way back to the 1850s, before the Civil War, before the National Reform Association, before any major Sunday law agitation. She was already shown that this would happen. And to silence any lingering doubt, she writes, "When our nation shall so abjure the principle of its government as to enact a Sunday law, Protestantism will in this act join hands with popery. It will be nothing else than giving life to the tyranny which has long been eagerly watching its opportunity to spring again into active despotism." There's no mention here of alternative, adjustments, or other forms. Only a solemn warning of what is to come. Let us be clear, the Sunday law is not a flexible concept that God might rewrite to suit modern culture. It is the final test. Ellen White has made it clear that the observance of Sunday would be enforced upon the people, while the true Sabbath of Jehovah would be dishonored and trembled underfoot. This is the climax of the great controversy. To make it conditional is to make prophecy optional. It is not. God, through His prophet, has told us so, and what we have seen developing right now is telling us that it is coming because it is starting to look very familiar.